Let's now talk about intelligibility, which is a key factor related to the learning and teaching of pronunciation. And there has been a lot of debate about this whenever there has been a talk about the learning of proper pronunciation. Intelligibility may be seen as learners' efforts of learning a proper pronunciation of English language in order to be understood by others in a given time or in a given context. This seems to be a sensible goal in the contemporary situations of English as an international language. And this is also very important for an effective communication, because when there would be no intelligibility in the pronunciation or speaking skills of a speaker, there would be no communication, and we would regularly confront communication failures. So maintaining a reasonable level of intelligibility would always be desirable in the learning and teaching of any lesson of pronunciation. The degree to which students would like to acquire a perfect accent or pronunciation would also depend on learners' future needs and their attitudes as well. For example, some learners may have an attitude of learning the pronunciation in a native-like fashion. They would like that there would be no distinction between their and native's accent. Other students, however, may not necessarily be interested in speaking in a native-like fashion, but they would like to speak in a way that they may easily be understood by others, though they may not be speaking like the native speakers. Very frequently, we know speakers or learners of English language would like to retain their own accent, where there is some kind of mixture of their own languages, sounds as well, or sound patterns as well. So this seems quite fair to many people, as long as it does not create the issue of intelligibility. Based on such political, social pressures, intelligibility appears to be a reasonable goal for the teaching of English in recent times. This means that teaching of pronunciation should focus on training people knowing the pronunciation to the extent that they may be understood by others easily, as compared to the goal that they should learn a perfect pronunciation of English language, which is almost the same as that of native speakers or very close to it. Such an approach may have certain implications on the teaching of pronunciation. For example, teachers may realize that in such a situation where intelligibility is the goal of teaching pronunciation, some aspects of pronunciation may be more important than others. For example, those aspects which may create a communication failure or lack of understanding among interlocutors should be realized and should be told to the students quite frequently, and those aspects which may not create a lack of understanding or miscommunication among interlocutors of a second language, they may be ignored for a while, or they may be given less importance. In case of individual sounds, the context of utterance is very important to be understood. However, in a case of words, the stressing words and phrases correctly is very vital, because this carries most of the time very important messages within a communication. So whenever we are trying to teach pronunciation in a second language, we should emphasize on stressing the words and phrases, so that the learners may not miss those important messages which are carried by this kind of stress or intonation. Intonation, as I just mentioned, is also vital and an important carrier of meaning, and this should be emphasized by the teachers within the classroom. Intelligibility is very important and related to the teaching of English as an international language. Uh, we know, and many researchers emphasize on this, and that teachers in today's world should focus that learners learn those aspects of the pronunciation of English which are understood by various parts of the world which English is spoken. So the teacher should expose their students to those minimum features of pronunciation of English to which Jenkins calls a lingua franca core. So a lingua franca core should be introduced to all learners of English language so that these learners may learn the pronunciation of English language in order to interact with various people living in various parts of the world. To sum up, I might argue again that the argument that intelligibility is the only goal for teaching English language may not be interesting or may not be attractive for some learners even in the contemporary world. They might still would like to grasp a native-like proficiency or pronunciation as a result of their efforts to learn pronunciation. In this regard, teachers might have a good interaction with the students before they begin a pronunciation class and can look into their individual aspirations as well as their future needs, and only then they can decide better that which goal of the teaching of pronunciation should be followed within a classroom.